There are new questions into how the We Charity planned to use federal dollars for a student summer program. CBC has gained access to documents showing the charity offered financial incentives to get as many students involved as possible. The Prime Minister apologized yesterday for not distancing himself from the decision to award We the contract. Both Justin Trudeau's mother and brother were paid to speak at We events. CBC's Janice McGregor is tracking the story for us live from Ottawa. Janice, tell us what you know.
Yeah, interesting story to keep investigating here, Asha, but not an easy one. Among the documents that were shown to me, shared with me over the last few days, is the agreement that needed to be signed between charities or not-for-profits that were going to host, train, and supervise student volunteers under this grant program, and We, which of course had a $19.5 million contract to administer this grant program on behalf of the federal government. There is a clause in this agreement that says that they are supposed to keep all information confidential. And in fact, it talks about any disclosures about their participation. And it says, I'll just read it to you because it's kind of interesting. It says that all personnel who are involved in this program would have to make only positive mentions of the project, including in public disclosures and social media. I think this partly explains why we haven't heard a lot from some of the organizations that were to be part of this program. Nevertheless, I have been reaching out to some, heard back from a few, had some information shared with me, materials that the We Charity has generated as part of its efforts to get this program off the ground. And some interesting things emerged. First of all, there was a $5 million pot of money set aside to help these organizations to recognize the fact that during the pandemic, a lot of charities, their fundraising was cut. They haven't been able to do their regular activities. They had to lay off a lot of staff, for example. It's been very hard on the not-for-profit sector. And if you're going to onboard, as they say, their jargon, a lot of student volunteers, that could be very difficult unless you have extra resources. So this $5 million pot was intended to help do that. But how We was distributing this $5 million, there's some flags here, particularly because it didn't seem to be setting kind of the same price for the same charity per kind of numbers of students that they were taking on. There were different criteria. I heard examples that were sort of offering kind of different dollar values for 100 students, one charity being offered a lot less than another. The We organization provided me with a statement yesterday explaining that it was using criteria like regional diversity, the ability of an organization, to include students who are visible minorities, Indigenous students, and also taking into account whether a charity was kind of small, regional, or whether it was bigger in scope, national in scope, when it was deciding kind of how that money would go round. But interesting to see that. Also interesting, something else that charities were mentioning to me, that if they said, we don't actually have any work right now, the We Charity would come back and say, well, actually, we can provide you with some ideas of how to create some work. And they had a number of different jobs available, a lot of them involving social media outreach, making videos for seniors and kids, making masks, kind of work sort of created or invented to let the students participate, whether or not that charity had kind of work important to its mandate prior to We approaching them. So a number of different things emerging from these documents and the conversations I was able to have, kind of flagging, some issues around how this program was being administered.
Interesting. And, there was swift reaction yesterday to the Prime Minister's apology. What are you seeing today?
Yeah, so, yesterday, apologies from the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, and Craig and Mark Kielburger. Remember those big full-page newspaper ads for how this has gone down. Today, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet out suggesting that based on what he's seen, he believes that the Prime Minister doesn't ask him to quit, but he says he should be stepping aside so that he can focus on his political career. Meanwhile, there are a lot of other problems to solve during the pandemic. Blanchet suggesting Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland should perhaps take over for the time being while some of these investigations continue. Here's the leader of the Bloc Québécois.
We will not be satisfied with his apologies. Again, he has done so much of it that it has become worthless. So this is why we propose that he does step aside.
Something to watch for, though, Asha, as this week goes along, some committee meetings. I've noticed that we now have a posting for the Ethics Committee to meet this Friday. This is an emergency meeting requested by the Conservatives on that committee. The Bloc Québécois said today it will be supporting the Conservatives' call for this third committee now to investigate it. They will join the Government Operations Committee, which will probably have some hearings perhaps in August. And most importantly, the Finance Committee, which already has agreed and passed motions to hold a study on this, requesting documents and starting to hear from witnesses. Now, we are still watching to see when those finance meetings are going to be. Prime Minister suggested yesterday some of them might be this week, actually, so we're watching for the notices on those. They want the Prime Minister himself to appear at that committee. He didn't say he wouldn't. Yesterday, he said they are considering invitations to appear right now. So lots to come on this, especially on the committee front.
Yeah, for sure. Wait and see approach. CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. You can read her detailed analysis of the story on our website. She's done a lot of work. Just check out CBCNews.ca.